Good morning. Thanks for letting me come and present to you guys. I was so fired up to learn more about the Deshka River. As you can see, the map up here is of the Matsu Valley and is of the Dena'ina territories. And I should point out too that the boundaries, there was never really any boundaries between the Atna and Dena'ina territories. It was for our own convenience, for our reports to have these boundaries and stuff. There was so much intermarriage and relationships going on there that the boundaries wasn't really there. But I'll be really fast though. Naming names. This is Pioneer Peak, and it was called Dena'ina. And it was the one that's standing over us, but I just wanted to put in here, the place names are very important to the Dena'ina. They didn't have any maps or anything, so they used place names, and the place names were very descriptive and described the areas where they're gonna be. But I wanted to point out, this slide here is our LiDAR, and this is LiDAR of all the active, or the archaeological sites, the possible archaeological sites throughout the Matsu Valley. And the pointer is, there's Deshka. There's the Deshka area right there. And it's pretty significant. I did some more research in there for this presentation, and you could see, this is from Shempete's book, and it has all the place names and everything from Shempete's book, and there's the mouth. The Deshka and the Croto Creek to the Dena'ina were the mouth with they were one and the same. So the Deshka River and the Croto Creek, they were both on the mouth. You can see on this other map on this side here, the purple is where the village sites were. But there was a north site and a south site as well. And then what was really cool is about 5 to 6 miles up the Deshka, there was a summer fishing village, and then there were thousands of people used the fish traps up there. And here's a little more zoom in on the mouth. And there was actually a north Deshka and a south Deshka. It had grown so big and there were so many folks there. There was one village, there was one house there where there was it was so large that multiple families lived in it, and it was cordoned off in between the families and stuff. There was so many people living in the building. And the salmon ceremony is the last salmon ceremony. The first salmon ceremony, it just kind of goes where a young lady goes, she goes down to the fish trap despite her father's admonition to not go down there, and she goes down there and she starts talking with the fish and understands it, and they start communicating, and she slowly turns into a salmon herself, and they disappear. So then the father's trying to look for her for a whole year, trying to find her, doesn't find her, and then when the fish start coming around the next year, there's some salmon in the fish trap, and he pulls them out there, and he goes back and gets the small one there, but when he goes to get it, there was a baby, and it looks like and it turns out it's his grandson from his daughter. But the grandson teaches him and tells him how he needs to take care of the salmon so that they can come back the next year. And that's what the Dena'ina really believed, is that you had to take care of the salmon to be able to have them come back and they'll give themselves back to you and everything. So, and that's it for me on my side here. I wanted to make sure I hustle through for Fran to present as well.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the Indigenous Dene sites in the Matanuska Valley, and talk a little bit about some of the ways and means that the fishing was taking place by the Indigenous people. So I'll quickly run through these slides. I have quite a few. But first we'll talk about some of the, after the recession of the glaciers, and there are 33 glaciers that feed the valley. People started coming into the Matsu Borough, and we have done, let's do it. Somehow I'm not working. There you go. Yeah, so just go the other way so you can see. Good. So you can see from the northeast area, a lot of people came into the valley. Those are some of our oldest sites. We're trying to find out the migrations into the valley, and the oldest ones we have discovered were around Trapper Creek at about 13,000 years. So that would have been just before the complete recession of all the glaciers, which was about 10,000 years ago. And these are some of the routes that people came into the valley, both from the west side and the east side. And the east side would have come down the Matanuska Valley from the Copper River area. And this is a close-up of the Matanuska area. We have Long Lake and Bonnie Lake and Wiener Lake, which is on the easternmost arrow, and this arrow here would be Ravine Lake, and those sites have been somewhere between 3,000 to 6,000 years. The one on the Long Lake was determined to be about 6,000 years, a village that was found at the westernmost end of the lake, where there's now a parking area and fishing, where people go in to fish. This is just a schematic of when we think the salmon may have started spawning in Mat-Su and Susitna drainages, but we're going to leave it up to these experienced salmon symposium folks to figure that one out for us. These are a close-up of some of the sites along the Knik Arm. The Knik Arm was a very important area. Most of the rivers that feed Knik Arm all had intensive settlements around them. And we call them shifting settlements because we notice with the dates of our settlements, and when we go into the house pits that we excavate, they are not all the same date, so they're not all contemporaneous. And a lot of it is because of shifting sites. People would expend all of the resources around them and maybe move to a different place, or might have moved because of diseases or other factors, environmental factors that would make them move to a different location, then they come back years later. So we have sort of different house sites that represent different time periods within the same area. This is what a construction of a Dena'ina house looks like. The one on this side, you can see they're about 4 feet below surface and 4 feet above surface, and that was because of the insulation of the earth that helped keep them warm in winter. All of the houses generally had a central hearth, and if you notice the construction of the logs, the horizontal logs were tied at each corner, and then, I'll point this out. Right here, you can see there's a bark on the exterior of the logs, and that helped wick the moisture whenever it rained away from the logs, so the logs didn't get saturated. They also, in some of the descriptions of houses, hollowed out each log that made the house to fit over the log underneath to make a tight fit rather than having chinking between the logs. So very clever. You think of the tools that they might have used were mostly stone tools. A lot of the houses that we find in the Mat-Su borough are more single units, like the ones at the top there, with a small room adjacent to it. Usually the small room would be used as a banya or sweat lodge. And the one with the several house rooms off it, like this one, we found only one example of that, and that was at the Settlers Bay, and it was dated to about 1600. These are cache pits that we excavated down at Knik, and it's a very typical design of cache pits. You have 4 on the bottom and 3 on the top. The ones on the top would be the berry pits. The one on the bottoms would be the for larger animal and fish. And we found fish bones in the one that's closest to me. This is what a typical cache pit looked like. I wanted to bring this up because that's what Deshka has lots and lots of cache pits at all of the entryways of the different rivers. And the one over there is one that we excavated. This has layer on layer on layer. This whole area, which is about 10 centimeters, 10 to 15 centimeters, was just layer upon layer of reuse of birch bark over time. We couldn't even count the layers, there were so many. This is a typical house with the room in the front here, which was a banya, and then the larger room in the back. The big tree came out of the fire hearth. That would be the fire hearth. And we look for the largest tree in a building, and usually in a house pit, and usually that's where the hearth is. This is a harpoon that was found in one of the houses, and this was found in the midden. And this is a concentration of house pits and cache pits down around Cottonwood Creek. And this is a typical house pit area just north of Cottonwood Creek. And this demonstrates the size of some of those cache pits that we find. We got several people in them demonstrating the size. This is the round of harvesting over a year. Most of the species of salmon were caught during the summer and fall. And these are some of the fishing techniques that were used. And one of the things that we'd like people to look out for in some of those small rivers that are feeding the Deshka would be the possibility of fish weirs. Now, a quick go through some of the different types of weirs. This is one that would have been very similar to what was found at Takat, at Elmendorf. And these are just some of the trapping and storing of fish, this being a cache pit here. And this is by Dimi Macheris, who's Akna, who recreated what it would look like. It could be the Deshka. And this is our elders sharing their knowledge with the next generation during the culture camp. And this is Shampit, who is an elder who shared his encyclopedic knowledge. He gave us hundreds of names of places from his tours and travels throughout the area. And thank you.
Just while we're waiting, why don't we invite, anyone have any questions for Kevin or Fran? Yeah, go. I got it.
I was curious what species were found at some of the sites up by Trapper Creek that are 13,000 years old, as far as what was being caught at that time. Oh, sorry, here, right there.
The only thing that we were able to find in Trapper Creek, we did not find any type of fish there. It was on an overlook, and I would say that they probably were hunting big game from that spot, but they were indeed coming down into the valley at the time, and most of what we find that dates that back would be just stone tools. And there were stone tools that showed that they were using very large choppers that we think were used on big bones. But we also found some very micro blades that would have been used for smaller harvesting of animals. So but most of it would have been large game.
One more? Okay, let's do it.
Fran, are you able to recover fish scales from your cache pits? And could they be shared with fisheries biologists to look at, to figure out the species?
Work that I did down at the Settlers Bay area, we found some otoliths, and but I haven't found scales per se, but we have found salmon, the backbone of salmons, and we found those in cache pits down at Knik.
Thank you. And just to flag that book, Shem Pete's Alaska, that Kevin and Fran referenced, they should have copies at Fireside Books across the street. So if you're interested, head over.